Hi everyone, welcome back to the Nick and Sanjee podcast, where we share our tips and tricks on how to grow a YouTube channel as we ourselves go on that journey. So welcome back, Nick. How are you today?
I'm pretty good. It's good to be back. How are you?
I'm well. It is good to be back, and a great topic on how to stay consistent and why it's important. So in this episode, we're going to try and share with both each other and with yourselves around some of our tips and tricks on how to stay consistent, but also why it's important and why it does matter, especially if you're building a YouTube, podcast, or any kind of social media platform. And I'm certainly going to be learning a lot on this. I've certainly been up and down when it comes to consistency. I think, Nick, you're definitely much more consistent. So this is really me interviewing you and learning. And I think there'll be quite a lot that we can share through this. I'll give you examples of what not to do.
Oh, sounds good. I'm sure there's plenty of examples of what to do as well. So.
Absolutely. So let's kick off with our individual journeys on consistency. So Nick, tell us a bit about how you've gone with consistency when it's come to your platforms.
Well, I think for me, it's been very up and down. I mean, I've been doing my channel for, I think, about 3 years now, and it's been up and down over those 3 years, especially the first two. I think when I first started my channel, I aimed to do one video a week. And that was while I was working. I think I was working part-time at the beginning and then moved into full-time work not long after. So I was trying to get one video out a week. And I think I'd probably get 3 weeks in a row consistent, and then I drop off and I go for stretches without uploading anything. I think my worst month was probably my worst stint was maybe 3 months of not uploading. But it was pretty sporadic, which was kind of good because it forced me to think about why I was sporadic and why I wasn't prioritizing uploading content. We could talk a bit more about that later in terms of the answers I arrived at with those questions. But now this year I've been pretty consistent. I've been obviously really lucky in that I've been doing it full time. So I think it's been about 6 months and I've uploaded something every day for the last 6 months, except for last week. And thankfully that was intentional. It wasn't a mistake because I've started to adjust my upload frequency a little bit. But yeah, it's been pretty consistent the last 6 months. So that's kind of been my journey with consistency. So it's been up and down, that's for sure. How about yours?
Fantastic. Yeah, mine's been normally I would say similar. I think in a lot of our situations I usually say similar, but not in this case. Mine has been it's been my consistency itself has been up and down. So when I started, I was pretty consistent early 2020, and then I was very quiet through mid 2020, and then it picked up again towards the end of the year. And then 2021, I was a bit hit and miss. And then I think when I got monetized, I started to do it a bit more consistently because I saw it's kind of different. Yeah, you see the value of monetization, and then you're like, oh, I'm really keen to keep this going.
Yeah. Totally.
And then after that, I think I tried to explore some different areas. And then at the end of 2022, I stopped making things, and I didn't intentionally stop. I definitely wanted to. I just never got around to making a video, which is really bad, very lazy. But I now know that's a dangerous thing, because I think in the last 3 years there's been a few similar moments where I've stepped away from it, and then I've realized how hard it is to get back into it, and how hard it is to record and things. Because I remember in the early days I used to blame it on not having a nice setup and not having an easy setup to just sit down and hit record with. And then I learned, even if I had that, I would optimize my bedroom so that it was perfectly set up to record YouTube videos, and even then it was still a bit of a struggle to kind of get into it. So it's been a bit up and down. So as I speak now, I don't think I've recorded any videos in the last 6 months myself. So it'll be interesting to get back. It's been a long time.
It'll be good to see you recording some stuff again. But like, I think we've talked about it a few times. You know, like it's always just getting that first one done, and then once the first one's done, it helps you just kick back into the groove of it, and I don't know, the motivation comes back. Not quite sure what that's about, but yeah. So
Yeah,
that's cool.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, absolutely. So I was thinking we've already touched a bit on it, but why does consistency matter? Do you think for us as content creators?
Yeah, well, I've got a few sort of thoughts in terms of what my experience has been in terms of why consistency has helped me, and I'm really keen to hear your thoughts on that as well. And the first one for me, like, has always been it's good practice. Like, the more consistent I am with making stuff, yeah, like I'm just putting in the reps basically to improve my content, improve my script writing, improve thumbnails, figure out what works. And then I've definitely found, as I think you have as well, like when we're consistent and in a good groove, you just get a better feel for what's working and what's not. I think like just the constant feedback, you know, from views or likes and comments and stuff like that, just helps to give you a good sense of what's working. I don't know what your experience has been with that, like in terms of, yeah, like practicing creating content and then getting feedback from viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. The feedback from the viewers is very handy because it also gives you those ideas for the next video, because
Yeah,
that can often be, yeah, the bottleneck for losing consistency is losing ideas, I think.
yeah,
And yeah, the refining the art as well, and
yeah,
being like, let me test this way of editing or this kind of way of uploading an image. How do people react to it? So yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. Because I think we've talked about it before as well. People like Ali Abdul say how you need to get out, you know, the first 50 or even 100 videos that are probably going to be pretty crap. And I've definitely
Mm.
found that to be true in my experience. Like the majority of my first 100 videos, which is a lot of videos if you think about it, like it's a lot of work,
Yeah.
are pretty average. And so yeah, like the more consistent you can be, just the more reps you're getting in, and then the more your content will hopefully be improving. Another reason why I think consistency helps is because it's basically just like quantity. Like for a long time, I think up till
Mm.
now, I've kind of believed in the idea of quantity over quality. I don't know what you think about that, but that's kind of changing a little bit for me at the moment. But for the last probably 2.5 years, I've really prioritized quantity, um, with the idea that the more stuff I've got out there, the more opportunity there is for people to find my content and therefore subscribe to my channel or find my Instagram page. So I don't know what your experience has been with that in terms of just like having a lot of content out there. Yeah, creates more opportunities for people to find you.
Yes, absolutely. That, yeah, I like the idea around creates more opportunities, increases the surface area across all the different platforms.
Yep.
I've, yeah, when I think I was doing it mainly on YouTube, but I would do the odd Instagram thing. Definitely didn't do that much on Twitter, but that could be an opportunity as well. And now Threads. So yeah, I agree. I think the more you make, and then the issue is often, and we can talk about this later as well, is the practicality of how you can create those multiple pieces out of the one video. I
Yeah,
know
yeah,
Gary V talks a lot about it, like, you know, make one video and then cut it up and use bits and pieces of it to
yep,
eject out to the market.
yep.
But in practically, that's quite hard. But I think he's got like a whole team that does it.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, that would be very nice. A team who could do it up. I reckon that'll be the first thing I hire out if I get big enough to be able to hire someone, is someone to do my shorts content, my short form content, because it is quite tedious. Although I'm enjoying it at the moment, but yeah, I mean, for me, that's kind of the two main reasons why I prioritize consistency, is just to get practice, and the more content I've got out there, the more, you know, potential for eyeballs to be looking at my content
Mm-hmm.
and more people to find me. There's a few others I've got listed here that I've heard are good reasons to be consistent, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. So I'm keen to your thoughts. The first one was just being regular with your content means people know when to expect your content. So like if you do a video every week on a Friday, which is what I do, people sort of come to expect your content on the same day of the week, and that's good for engagement. I personally haven't been convinced by that idea for me. Maybe it's my content, maybe it's because it's varied, but I've never really noticed people noticing that if I miss my regular upload day. Yeah. So what's your experience been with that?
Mine's definitely been, yeah, I agree. I don't think there's necessarily been a day that anyone's expected of me, but if I'm away for more than 3 or 4 weeks, I will see people comment on my old videos saying, "Hey, where are you going? Where have you gone? Did you get fined? Are you in jail?"
Oh, really?
Because it's a shady aspect for personal finance stuff. But yeah, that's often been the question. It's been less so days, but more so a couple of, or probably like 3 or 4 weeks, and everyone's like, "Well, what's going on?" Like even now, if I look at some of my old content and I look at the comments, yeah, there's been a bit of that basically. Where'd you go? What happened? All the way through to, did you get fined? You must be in jail. That's probably why you've stopped uploading.
That's hilarious. I mean, I guess that means that there is some credence to the idea that, I guess that makes sense. Like if people are following your journey and regularly watching your content, they come to expect it. And then hopefully, I guess you get to the point where they're looking forward to watching your content, and that would help engagement. But yeah, it's really interesting. Another one I've heard before is the algorithm rewards consistency. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, I've seen that. But it's a massive runway, isn't it, to get there? It's like you upload maybe for a month consistently, and then only towards the start of the next month you start to see the uptick. Yep. And then even if you stop, the uptick does continue on for a bit. Yep. And then, so you have this sense of safety almost. You're like, oh, it hasn't lost it. But then if you become a bit inconsistent after that, then it drops off pretty quickly, I've found. So definitely, yeah. And you need a good runway too. You need to be doing it for at least a month, I've found, before the algorithm does turn around and say, oh, yep, okay, I'll give you a boost up on this.
Totally. I even noticed that at the start of the year when I went full time and started uploading like on pretty much almost every day. Like it probably took a good month and a half to 2 months before I really started to see an increase in like views on my content. So yeah, I think the algorithm does reward consistency, but I also think there's like a lot of factors to the algorithm, because I think I kind of have had this idea even this year that if I'm just consistent, that will equal growth. But I think I'm starting to realize now consistency is one of the keys, and there's lots of other keys, if that makes sense. like for example, engagement, quality of the content, all that kind of thing. So it's like a combination of things. You can't just constantly put things out that are low quality, and just because you're consistent expect to grow. I think that's what I'm learning at the moment. So yeah, and that kind of leads me to my final point, which is just that, or my personal experience anecdote, that I'm moving more towards trying to prioritize quality at the moment, because I have been really consistent the last 6 months, but the growth hasn't been as exponential as I hoped / expected from consistency. So I think I'm wondering now, maybe it's just due to the fact that my quality hasn't been there. So if I combine quality with consistency, then hopefully I'll get better results. But yeah, I think to summarize why consistency matters, I think it gives you good practice. More content out there means there's more opportunities for people to find you. Your community will reward you for consistency, and then I think the algorithm in conjunction with other factors appreciates consistency as well. So
and not to mention, we've touched on it probably in previous ones around money, but for the typical creator who's starting out, maybe they're part-time, so they're not relying too heavily on the money. But if you are relying on the income from your side hustles, you do have to just keep turning up to keep generating that income. It's not entirely passive. Like you do have to put quite a lot of work in and
Yep.
you can only really declare passive income, the income that you get from your old videos from maybe, a year ago.
Yep.
But outside of that, yeah, you do have to keep turning up, even if you just want to keep making your same level of revenue, because the odd video will do well and then they'll kind of die off after a while, and then you might go back down to a baseline level of revenue.
So I guess that leads us to essentially how to be consistent. Like, what can we practically do to become more consistent as content creators? And I think we've both, like we've talked about, struggled with consistency over the years and wrestled with how to be more consistent. So I guess I'll share just a couple of things that have helped me in my consistency. I'll be keen to hear your thoughts as well. But I think the first thing that's kind of more conceptual, less practical, is just coming back to the reason why I want to make content. Because I think, again, looking back to those periods of time in the past where I've gone without posting, even if it's just like a couple of weeks, I really ask myself, okay, why am I not prioritizing this? If this is really an important thing to me, something that I enjoy, something that I want to grow, why am I not putting the effort in? And I think I realized most of the time in the early days when I wasn't consistent, it was because my reasons why I wanted to do it weren't really sustainable. So I think, especially early on, I think I quickly had the idea that I could make a decent side income from a YouTube channel within the first 6 months, And I think it didn't take long to realize I was putting in a lot of hours for very little return. And I think that demotivated me a lot. I was like, I can't be bothered. I'm not making a lot of money. Why am I doing this? And so that's when I really had to ask myself, is making money or making a side income going to continue to be the main reason why I make YouTube videos? And I think for me, it shifted from just wanting to make a side income to a more sustainable reason for me, which was I really wanted to develop my video skills. And so that was a reason why that didn't really matter. Like, it didn't really matter in terms of the results that I was getting. All that mattered was the effort that I put in. And so I think that really helped me to be more consistent, because I was like, okay, this week I might not make, X amount of dollars, but I can improve, my transitions, or I can improve my color grading a little bit. And the only way to do that is by actually creating some content. So yeah, I think understanding why you want to make content, and then reminding yourself of that and making sure it's a sustainable reason rather than just sort of arguably a more shallow reason. It depends on what your goals are, I guess, and what motivates you. But I don't know what your experience has been with that, or what your thoughts are.
Yeah, definitely around how to be consistent and having the why. I was very similar. I think in the early days it was almost simpler because it was, I just want to get to monetization. And then when you see, I agree, in the early days nothing's happening, and then you have one or two videos that do well. And when you think, okay, if I keep doing this, I can get to monetization, reasonably quickly, so let me get there. Because the maths becomes pretty straightforward after a while. Is if you think each video is like a product, and each product will generate a certain amount of view time, watch time, and potentially revenue. If you just put more out there, it makes sense that you'll end up, hopefully making more money over time. Yep. But the idea is each video, as you make more videos, each individual video contributes less to the overall amount. So It's sort of like, if you have 10 videos, your 11th video contributes a lot more than if you have 100 videos in your 101st video.
Yeah,
and
interesting.
Potentially that, I think that's what's happened, probably to both of us, is as we've made more videos, we sort of hit that peak, and then each video is kind of started to now pare back, and we're really now waiting for that 10 baggers, like the ones that will really knock us out of the park.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think even like having monetization as the goal, once you reach that goal, it's like, where do you go from there? What's the new goal that's going to keep you going for the long term? And I think for me, like when I did have it, as financial goals. And I do still have financial goals, but I think they're lower priority for me now. It was like if I missed that goal for a month, for example, then it's like, oh, why bother? This is too much work. But when I shifted my higher priority goals to something that's more sustainable, I think that's what really helped. So yeah. And then I think for me, a more practical thing that's helped me be more consistent is kind of just like advice that I think most people get when it comes to building habits, like in Atomic Habits. I think I probably got this concept from there, which is just to make sure that my goals aren't too big to start off with. So I try and make sure my goals are like achievable, they're relatively easy to start off with. Even when I was working full time, I think doing a video a week was relatively reasonable, except for when I had busy weeks, and then it just wasn't realistic at all. And so I think if I'd maybe set my my goals at that time to maybe once a fortnight, it would have been more reasonable, and I could have been more consistent. But I think it's like a matter of like once you fall out of consistency, it's like we were talking about before, it's hard to get back into it. So I think if you can make it simple enough that you can just keep up with it, that you don't fall out of consistency, then that's kind of the place you want to be in. And even for me at the start of the year, I set goals that were achievable, and then I realized I could actually output more. And so then I upped my output goals rather than starting with a really high goal where I was just going to burn myself out. So yeah, that's kind of been my experience with the practicality. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely the process goals was also what I tried to do. And I think like I can jump into probably my biggest one was naturally sort of being, I think I'm more of a process oriented person. So I tried to look at, and this is probably a good process for someone after they've done a few videos, is you look at the end-to-end experience of creating a video. Right. So start to finish, all the steps, and then breaking it down and saying, okay, is this a roadblock? Is this a roadblock? How do I be more systematic with these steps? So, if you're struggling with idea generation, you put a lot of effort into that to make sure that's more consistent, that flows through. I know for me, the biggest roadblock was editing. So it took me 10 hours to edit a video when I haven't done it recently, but typically when I work with my editor, it's like maybe a 2-3 hour job, in terms of the amount of effort I'm putting into it. So I record the video, he does the first cut, then he sends it to me, and then I put in a bit of work to kind of give my commentary. It goes backwards and forwards a couple of times, and then we're done. So that took off a lot of mental load. So I think we've both said at the start, you should do the whole thing yourself, and then you figure out what you want to try and delegate away and what takes up the mental load. Because I know for me, sometimes I didn't want to record a video purely because I didn't want to have to edit a video down the track.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have the mental capacity for that, so I wouldn't even record the video. And then once I knew I was getting an editor to do it, then I'd be like, I'll just hit record, say whatever I want, and then send it off to him. I think another level of accountability could have been if I had paid him in advance. And I think this was someone from the PTYA crew, so they had done it, is they just paid their editor in advance for like 4 months, 4 videos every month. And so the onus was on the content creator to then send them the 4 videos. Otherwise the editor's just going to sit there and get the money. They don't really care. So you're sort of like, oh, I've paid him, I now need to get it and, record something. Whereas if you were maybe paying on demand, not, you can kind of allow that to delay. And even after a while, my own editor reached out to me and he's like, you haven't sent me anything. Is everything okay? Are you all right? And now he's completely given up on me, I think. So if I reach out to him, he'll be like, I've moved on. I'm now the CEO of my own editing company. I don't have time for you. But yeah, I definitely think that's a key thing is having the process goals, identifying the roadblocks, and then being able to automate out what you can from it.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a huge thing. Just like the idea of reducing friction, like we talked about before, I think. Like whatever you can do to reduce the friction for you, whatever that is. Like the more you can do that, then the simpler it is. And I think to me that ties in with the idea of making your goals achievable in order to help you stay consistent.
Yeah.
Like, if you hate doing one section of work and that you know that that's going to throw out your consistency, then outsource it if you can, or find simpler ways of doing it. Like, I think it's really good. So,
absolutely. Well, there we go. So that is our journey on consistency. Anything else that sort of popped up into your mind as we were going through this?
I think just that it's a journey, you know, like, you have to be patient with yourself when you're building consistency. I think, both of our experiences have shown that it takes a while to develop. It's like any sort of habit, I guess. You just got to be gracious with yourself and do your best and just keep going. I think that's the main thing. Yeah.
Well, there you go. There's our episode on consistency. It's probably one of our shorter episodes potentially. There you go. But if you are listening to us on Spotify, thank you for listening on there, and please do rate us with a 5-star rating and whatnot, and any other platform. Also, if you have joined us on YouTube, thank you for joining us. Please leave a comment on what you think about our new remote setup. Maybe in a future video, we'll go into a bit more detail on why we've gone to a remote setup, but I know in our previous videos, we've always been in the same room, so please let us know what you think of this. Yeah. And Nick, where can people find you if they want to find out more about you and your content?
Yeah, I have a website, nickkendall.com.au, and then my YouTube channel, Nick Kendall, and my Instagram, which is at @nickkendall_. How about you, Sanjee?
Yep, same website, Sanjee Sen, and YouTube, Sanjee Sen. And then when it comes to Instagram, just be very careful. There's quite a few fake Instagram channels going out there with my name. And until I think Instagram lets us buy our own blue tick, I think that's going to happen for a while until I can get my own way of verifying myself, which is really the unfortunate reality is I think we just have to pay to get verified to stop them from using ours in the future.
Yeah, you should be able to do that because I've got the paid verification myself. So
you've got it? Oh, fantastic. Yeah. Okay, well, there we go. Live on channel, we have discovered that I can do this too. So from now on, I will do that. Maybe someone else has stolen it. That's why I can't get my own.
Probably not.
A scammer has bought the Sanjee Sen thing. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Catch you later.